Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of week 6. In this lesson, we are going to look deeper at functions and we are going to create functions in a production ready way. My name is Mildred. In part 1 of this course, we looked at function and how to write functions on a surface level. But before we start, let's look at a global called name, written name like this. If you took our back-end development with Python and MySQL course, the course that is a prerequisite to this course, in part 3 you will recall that we discussed this and we said that we can think about this as a condition that we use to store code that should only run when a file is executed as a script. And let's do this like this. We'll say if name is equal to main, we want to do something. So what we are going to do now, we're going to write whatever we want to do under this condition, and this is what we are going to be using to run our script, and this is going to be below after we've written our functions. So every time you see if name is equal to main, you'll do something. We use pass as a placeholder so we don't error out now. Okay, so the global name is always set to main by Python if the interpreter runs the code. Okay, back to functions. We've examined functions in their basic form and we want to examine function in a deeper way where we learn how to write production ready codes. We define the function using the def keyword like this and then a name for the function followed by a parenthesis, and then we said in the parenthesis, let's say for instance I want to create a function called greet that will print out something to the screen. We said this parenthesis can take something we call parameters, and when we define a parameter here, when we call the function, we have to provide an argument. So let's say this function greet is just going to return a statement and we want it to return hello and welcome. Now, we're no longer using print statements, we're using return statements. The return statement returns a value to the calling script when the called function completes its task. We are going to look at how we can call this function now using return. Now, when you build your softwares, you don't use a print statement for a function. You want it to return something to the calling program, and so when it is called, it returns that value. If you need to print that value to the screen, then you use a print statement when you call the function. So now in the body of this condition, we can say if name equal to main. So if we run this script, we want it to print greet like this. So we're just calling the function, and when I run this, it prints hello and welcome here, which means that everything is working fine. So again, I said the return statement will return the value to the calling script when the function is called. We call the function greet and we put it in the parentheses of the print statement just for us to test and print out what the value of the function will return, or what will be the return value of the function when the function is called. Now this is a basic way of creating a function that does not take parameters, and so the parenthesis of the function definition is empty. There are two types of arguments when we call a function that is defined with parameters. We have something we call positional argument and we have the keyword argument. Now when we use positional argument, it must be included in the order in which the parameters are listed in the function definition. When we use keyword argument, we write a keyword is equal to the argument name. So let's give an example. Let's say we want to, for instance, get the area of a circle given the radius. So how do we create an area of a circle given the radius? So the formula we know is pi times radius square. We have a module in Python, the math module, that holds these mathematical formulas, and so we have already learned previously that we include another Python file with the import statement, and the name of this module is the math. These are inbuilt Python modules, so we want to import math. The first thing you do is to import all of the modules that you need, because we want to use the pi property from the math module. So we'll say def, let's give this name area circle like this, and what we want to do is in the parentheses we want to specify the parameter radius. So we want it to take a parameter, and the parameter it takes is going to be the radius. So given the radius, we want it to do something. We want it to return math.pi, because we are calling the pi property from the math module. So we'll say math.pi times radius raised to the power of 2. So we can do this in parentheses if you are easily confused, but you can work like this, and we want this to be executed first, but the order of precedence will always execute it first. So you can do like this, math.pi times radius raised to the power of 2. So whenever this function is called, the user must provide the value of the radius, which is the argument. And so we want to call, and we're going to print, since we use a return statement, what we want to print is the function area circle, and let's say we want the area of a circle whose radius is 20, for instance. And when we save this and we run, we get the area of the circle 125.64, yeah, which is approximately like that there. Or this is how we define a function that takes parameter, and then we supply the argument when we call the function. Let us look at how to use positional arguments, for instance. Let us illustrate positional arguments by trying to create a function that calculates the area of a trapezoid, for instance. And the area of a trapezoid has the formula. Let's comment this. The formula is, we have two bases, the top base, so we'll say represent it as a plus b as the two bases, and we'll divide a plus b by 2. So the top base plus the bottom base, or the bottom base plus the top base, is addition, so in any order we'll go. We divide this by 2. We are going to multiply it by the height, which will represent as c. And we can put it as height, but we'll represent it as c here. This is the formula for finding the area of a trapezoid. We want to use this to illustrate positional arguments, and we want to get the area of a trapezoid. Okay, so let's create it. Now let's say def, and let's say area trap, like this. And in the parentheses, we will say ABC, and we want to return the formula a plus b over 2 times c. So we have the formula here. And when we want to print now, we want to print, which is area trap, and let's say we have 2, 3, and 5 as the two bases. A will be 2, b will be 3, and c, the height, will be 5. So we want to get the area of a trapezoid which has the two bases as 2 and 3, and the height as 5. When we save and we run, we get 12.5 as the area of the trapezoid, which is correct. But this is using positional arguments. If we, for instance, say c is 5, and we decide to call the function, and we are trying to supply the argument in any order, we want to put the height first, and then we put the bases 2 and 3. We are going to get a wrong answer because this is positional arguments, and we get 10.5 because we must supply the arguments in the order in which the parameters were defined in the function definition. So this uses positional argument. This is what we call positional argument. If in the function definition the parameter a represents a base, b the second base, and c the height, you must provide the values when you call the function, and you supply the argument that way. We can make this easy when we call by using keyword arguments, and in that way we are going to use the keywords. For instance, instead of saying this, we don't want any mistake, we want to say c is equal to 5, comma, a is equal to 2, and b is equal to 3. This is keyword argument, where you specify the keywords, which are the parameter names, equal to this. So in any order you put them, it should give you the same answer, which should be 12.5 now, because now we are using keyword argument, and it is going to be printing this correctly because we use the keyword 12.5 here, and it's correct. So take note of the difference between positional arguments and keyword arguments. Positional arguments just means that you are not using any keyword. When you supply the arguments, when you call the function, you must specify the values for those arguments in the same order in which the parameters were specified during the function definition. So this is all about creating functions with parameters, and how to call the functions using the two types of arguments, the positional and the keyword argument. We have something we call return type, and as we write code, we have to write code for production ready application. And when we say we want a greater flexibility or adaptability or robustness, we will need to specify return types. Now we have a module called typing that supports type-in, and we'll look at that at some point as we go. We'll look at how we import the typing module and use the different types from the module. So let's say we want to create the area of a circle again, but this time we want to do it in production ready fashion, where we specify return types. So let's say we import maths, and what we want to do now is to define the area of a circle. So let's say area circle, like we did before, and in the parentheses we want to specify the radius. So when we put radius now, we have to specify the return type. We want it, because we did data types in Python, we need to remember the data types in Python. We want the user, or what we are expecting the radius to be, is an integer, so we'll say int. It can be float, and we want the final answer, or what we're expecting, to be a float. So specifying return types means that when you specify the parameter, you put a column and the data type of that parameter. Then you use this arrow sign to specify the final return value. When this is executed, what will be the data type of the value that is returned? Okay, and so when we do area of the circle here and want to print the area of a circle whose radius is 20, save, we'll still get the same answer that we got previously, but now we are writing with return types. So what I will expect you to do going forward is to always have the return type of all of the parameters that you specify and the final return type of the value that this function is going to return to the calling program. When we specify the data types of the parameters, we use a colon between the parameter name and the data type. And for the final one, before we put the colon to indent for the function definition or for the body of the function, we use this arrow sign, minus sign, and a greater than sign, and put a data type that is going to be what the data type of the evaluation of this is going to be. Let's try it for the area of a trapezium that takes 3 parameters so that you can see how we specify this. Let's say area trap is what we did before, and we had 3 different parameters. Let's say we had the 2 bases, base 1, base 2, and then the height. So let's say we have A will be an int. Let's say it takes an int, and then we'll put a comma, we put B will be an int, and then we'll put a comma and we'll put height, we want it to be an int also, and then the final return will be float. We want to specify the return. We are going to use the formula that we said is A plus B over 2 times height. So it's going to return, let's say return A plus B over 2, and we want all of these times the height, like that. And when we come here and we say area trap and we specify the value of A is equal to 2, B is equal to 3, and height is equal to 5. When we save this and we print, we get 12.5 like we got previously. So take note of return types. When I give you an assignment and I ask you to create a function, we want a production ready function. Here we don't use this math, so sometimes we remove things that we don't use. We're going to look at the different way that we clean up our files for production and the different standards we want to keep to as we go deeper in this course. So this is how we do return types, and this is what I expect to see going forward when you create your functions in any assignment. Let's review higher order functions. We say a higher order function is a function that contains other functions as its parameter, or it returns a function as an output. For example, let us create a function, and this function, let's call it SumNum. What we want this function to do is to take 2 parameters and add them together. So say SumNum, just like we want a function that sums 2 things. And so let's say it takes 2 parameters A and B, and we want it to return A plus B. Okay, this is one function. Now let's say we are going to do the area of a trapezoid this time. And while we do the area of the trapezoid, we want to do this in higher order function fashion, where we want one of the parameters to be the function, and the function will be the sum, because in the area of trapezium we say it is the A plus B, the 2 bases, top base plus bottom base, divided by 2, and then the result of that evaluation times the height. That was the formula. We said it was let's write it here again, A plus B over 2, and then we say times height. So once the result of this evaluation, let's use a parenthesis to know what we are evaluating first. Yeah, but as you go deeper, you know the order of precedence. You don't need to put a parenthesis when it's not needed. So this is the formula that we used previously to calculate the area of a trapezoid, but we want to illustrate higher order function using this. We have created a function that adds 2 numbers, A and B, and returns the sum of them. We want to now create another function, but this function we are creating, area of trapezoid, we'll say area trap, and what we want it to take is a function. We'll illustrate this by writing func. It will take a function and it will take the height C. And what we want this to do now is to return, we're going to be returning func. We're going to be returning func over 2 times C. So it will be func over 2 times C. Okay, you get the logic? The sum, the formula is A plus B, and we have a function that calculates the sum of 2 numbers. And since we know A and B is going to be the sum, we create a function knowing that this function takes 2 parameters, A and B, and we want it to take a 3rd parameter to illustrate the height C. So we call the function, and we return that function divided by 2, the return value for the function divided by 2 times C. Okay, let's say for instance we want to calculate the perimeter of a parallelogram, for instance. And the formula for that is 2 times, I think it's 2 times side plus base. Like, I know it's 2, and then we have base times height or something like that. Yeah, I think this is the formula for, no, base plus height. It's base plus height. Yeah, I think it's the formula for calculating the perimeter of a parallelogram. Let's do that again. Let's create another function now, def, and now it's going to be peri and para, like this. And then here again we'll get a function as its parameter, and it is going to return 2 times the function, because we said it's b plus h. So it's adding 2 numbers and multiplying by 2. The function sum num is what we are going to supply. So now let us run this. Let's do a print statement now. The first print statement we want is to get the area of a trapezoid, right? And we'll supply the A, B, and C values here. So let's just write a statement so that we'll know what is printed out. So we'll say something like the area of the trapezoid is equal to, and then I'll put my curly brace, and then I'll put area trap, and I'll put the sum is going to be 2, 3, and the height is 5, like we did before. So I'm calling sum num because the parameters here is to take a function. So we supply the first parameter for the area trap is the function, which is sum num, and we supply the arguments for that function, comma, and then the third parameter, which is c, which is the height here. Okay? And when we do this and we print, let's print the second one. I want the area, the perimeter of a parallelogram. Let's say perimeter of the parallelogram is sum num, and we have because this only takes the function, and we'll say the function takes 2 arguments and wants the perimeter of a parallelogram whose side plus height, the side and height are 2 and 3, right? Or let's say 5 and 7, for instance. Let's not just use 2 and 3. Let's say 5 and 7, like this. So when we supply this, because the return value here is 2 times whatever this evaluates to, we handle that in the return. And so when we print this out, for this I use a calculator, and I should get that the area of this trapezoid there should be 12.5, and this perimeter of a parallelogram here, which is 5 and 7, should be 24. If all is well, we should get the area is 12.5 and the perimeter is 24. So I want you to look at this deeply, and this is what we call higher order function. It's going to come in handy for you to understand this when we develop our software, and in a lot of job interviews you will need to illustrate this properly. So the whole concept of higher order function is just a function that contains another function as its parameter, or it returns a function as an output. Okay, so this example takes a function as its argument when you call the function. So let's look at another concept that we call args and keyword args. So we're looking at function as a whole from beginning to the depth of functions. And in lesson 2 also, we're going to look at another depth of nested functions and others. But let's look at args and keyword args. We call args like this, and we have something we call keyword args like this. So what are these? These are 2 special symbols that we use to pass arguments in Python. We have a wildcard character, the asterisk sign, that we use with these args and keyword args. We use this character, which is the asterisk sign, preceding the parameter name. So if we have the arg, for instance, let's say I create a function. Let me say I want to have, let's create a function with the first parameter to hold the family name, and the second parameter to hold a list of the members of the family, something like that. So let's say I'll create a function def, and let's say this is called fam members. Let's just create any function like this. And what we want it to take is an argument. The first parameter, for instance, will take the family name that is common to everybody, and the second parameter will take the first names of everybody in the family. We do not know in advance how many members are in that family, and let's say we want to supply a list to this as this parameter. So it will be a list of the names, first names of family members. So let's say we are going to define the first parameter to call it arg. Let's call it arg1. Remember return types. We want this to be a string. The family name is a string. And the second argument, we do not know in advance how many members of the family they are. We want to supply a list. If you do not know in advance the number of arguments that the user will supply, before the parameter name, you put an asterisk, and then you put the name of the parameter. Let's call this arg2, or let's say it's args like this. We want this to return a list of strings. So write it like this, list of strings. That's the return type. And at the end of the day, this function should return what? Let's say it returns a string. We're practicing return types while we build this. So this function takes in the name of a family member and returns a string with the name. Takes the names of the family members. The first argument takes the last name or the family name, and the second argument, we don't know in advance how many people will be in that family. We know the last name they will bear, so we just want to have the list of the first names of them supplied as arguments, and then we want to be able to say the members of the family are the last name with then all of the names or the list of names that are there. Let's say we want to say members of, for instance, the Johnson's family. So let's say we want to return this, for instance. So we want to return, let's return a statement, and I'll use the format string. I'll say I'm going to return the members of the, and then I want the first argument. So I'll say AG1. So the member of the, whatever the last name is, family, are, and I want to bring what is here in this. So let's return this and see if all is well, and if it works when we put the call the function, then we'll see. So let's call the function, and the function is fam members, and we supply the args here. We want it to be a list. So let's say we want the last name, of the family. The family name is Johnson, and then we want to supply a list of string. That's the return type that we suggested there, and it supplies a list of string to be all of the first names of the members of the family. Let's print this and see what it supplies. I'm suspecting that we might have to change how we put this return. Yeah, we have an error. We'll change how we put the return. So what I will do here is to say, let's say let's just put args. Let's not go through this hurdle of trying to convert to string. Let's say and I'll just put args because we want to return, we want to supply a list of strings, which means that a list in Python is defined using the square brackets, and all of the values or the items of the list are strings. That's what it means, list of strings, like this. List, square bracket, and string in it. So we do it like this, and then we say this. So this will work this way because now we are calling the family member. The last name we supply is Johnson's, and then all the members of Johnson's family are John, Jane, Alice, Bob. Let's run and see. I'm going to clear here first, and then I'll run, and then it prints it. The member of the Johnson's family are John, Jane, Alice, Bob, just like we wanted it to return here. Okay, so every time we want to do this, we know exactly how to specify the name of the parameter when we do not know in advance how many arguments the user will specify. Let's say we want to just get the names of the people. We don't know the names. We'll just put asterisk and we'll put names. So I'll put an asterisk sign and I'll write names. So this is the name of the argument, and let's say the names are all let's say strings, and we want it to return, this is a column, we want it to return string. And so here we'll just say return. What we want to return is names. Or let's say we want to get, so let's just return names like this and see what it does. And so here we'll call fam members and we'll just apply the names. I'm suspecting we might need to loop through this, but let's apply names. So I'll just remove this as a list, and let's say we're supplying an endless number of names here, and save, and I'll run, and it provides the name Johnson's, John, Jane, Alice, Bob, because we supplied a list of names. So you can take unlimited number of arguments when you put an asterisk before the name of the parameter, because we do not know in advance the number of arguments that we have. And this will be useful when we start creating our software, when you want to create a helper function that will take some list of items or something from the database. We don't know in advance, let's say the names of customers or the list of customers. We don't know in advance how many customers are registered on the site. So we don't know how many arguments will be passed into this at the end of the day. So things like that. There are complex kind of scenarios where we will need this. Okay, so this is how we use the args keyword. Remember that if you do not know in advance the number of arguments a user will specify, use an asterisk before the parameter name. Now we're already using return types here, which is anytime you specify a parameter, you want to define its data type, and then you use this at the end of all the definitions or the end of the parentheses to give what will be the final return type of that. Okay, so let's look at default, or let's first of all look at the keyword arguments. We've looked at arguments, but we've not looked at keyword arguments. So let's achieve the same thing. Let's use keyword arguments, and let's see. Let's say we want family members, and when we use keyword argument is when we want to specify keyword arguments and we don't know in advance the number of keywords or something like that. Okay, so we don't know the number of keywords that we are going to be specifying in advance. We use keyword arguments. So let me do this like this. Let's see, we want to say family members like this, and for keyword arguments you use double asterisk like this. Okay, we'll say double asterisk. Let's delete all of this. Let's make it less complicated without the return type first before we do. So let's say we want the names and we use double asterisk like this, and or let's say the return type is a list. Let's just do it one time. It's going to return a list, and what we want to return is, let's put a format string, and let's say we are returning the members of the, and we want to have these names, and we want to have last name as one of the keyword are these members like this. So I think we'll do it like this. So what I'm trying to achieve here is using keyword arguments, and if we don't know in advance the number of keywords that the user will supply when the function is called, we use double asterisk. We already know what keyword argument is, and so when we do this, we want to say let's call the function now. We are printing, let me not even use print, let's just call it like this. Let's say family members, and we want to use keywords now. So because we are doing keyword args, we want to use keyword now to say we are creating new keywords. We don't know in advance what. Let's say we create a keyword called members, for instance. So create a keyword called members, and it's going to be equal to, let's say it's a list, and then we have the last name equal to do. Now let me tell you what I just did here. Keyword here meaning I want to use keyword argument, which means I supply the argument keyword and then it's equal to the values of them. We use double asterisk with in front of the name of the parameter when we do not know the number of keyword arguments that the user will supply. I want it to return last name and members like this, which means I will have a keyword called last name and a keyword called members for me to return this. This is an example. This is not how it will work in real life. I want the final data type of what it returns to be a list, but what we are doing now here is a string. So let's not even put the return type and not cause problems. We're going to be returning a string. So we'll say fam members, and then we'll put the members here as a list, John, Jane, Jimmy, and then comma, we have another keyword last name, Doe, and then we'll save this and then we run, and then we have, so sorry, I'll print because I use return. So I'm using the print now. I remove it initially so we don't get confused on how we call the function. So we're going to print this. Let me clear and then I'll run, and then we have the members of the Doe family are John, Jane, and Jimmy. So I'll explain this again. We use keyword arguments when we do not know in advance the number of keywords that the user will specify. We are going to return this. Normally we just say let's return the names, maybe the keywords or something, but I just want to return the whole string. Let me put the return type as string, and I want to return a sentence that says the members of the keyword argument here is names, right? The parameter is names. So the names are in a pair of square brackets the name of the keyword that we'll use to supply the values for that argument. So we want to say the members of the last name of the family are, we want to now join this to this sentence. We want to join all of the names of the members. And so I just, because I already know what I want to print, I put a keyword called members and I supply a list of the members and then the last name of that members, and I got this. Let's say this is not what I want to do. I just want to return let's say the keyword, let's say return names. Okay, and then I'll come here to say print this, and then I'll clear and I'll run, and then I have members John, Jane, Jimmy, last name Doe. So this just tells me all of the keyword that I have and the values that we have there. I can put as many keywords as possible, and let's say new names, new member. Let's say we have another new member here that we want to, let me start this on the new line, new member Jack. So when I run this again, it will give me the new member, new keyword arguments that I've put. So what I did here is to just return a dictionary, and so this is going to be dict, return type, let's say it's dict, and we're going to be returning a dictionary that gives us the keyword as the key, members, and then the value, the key and then the value. That is what I have done here. So practice a lot about this so you can understand what this is all about. We have something we call default function parameter, where we have, like, let's say for instance, I want to put a function called my name, for instance, my name. And what I want to do with this function is to take a parameter called name, and if no name is supplied, I want it to give a default or Mildred. This is more, let's say my country is going to be more useful. Let's look for a more useful scenario. Let's say dev country, for instance, and then we put the default country name to be, we'll supply a default value is equal to, let's say the default value is St. Lucia. In the event that the user does not supply any argument, we want to use that default country. So let's say you have a site where people fill in information, and you know that these are for residents and citizens of a particular country. So you want to set that as a default. And that field as optional. So if the person does not fill in their country, automatically it just inserts St. Lucia there as the country. So this is the helper function for things like that. And what we want to print out here now is to print out the country, and will not supply any arguments to the function call. Let me clear. And then when I run this, it will just print out St. Lucia as the name of the country. If I supply an argument here to the country, let's say country, and I supply an argument, and here I say St. Vincent, and I run, it's going to print out St. Vincent here, because now it will replace. So this is what we call default function parameter, where we specify a default value for a parameter, and so if no value is specified or an argument is specified for that, it inserts the default there. Okay, so function definitions cannot be empty. If they're empty, they will generate an error. If you need a placeholder, you can use a pass, and I just did it before. If you create a function like this, if you put it like this, you always have an error if you don't have a return statement. If you are just creating a function placeholder to do things later, you can just put pass like this. Okay, so anytime you have a function definition, you need to use pass if you don't have what you are defining in the body of the function definition, and you will do that. If not, it will result in an error. All right, we also have this way we can specify that a function can only have keyword arguments, and so when we are calling the argument, we use, or when we are defining the function, we use an asterisk before the parameter. Let's say we want to define a function. Let's call this function let's call it name again, function names, or yes, let's say function names like this, or let's say function full name. And in this function, we want it to take two parameters, the first name and the last name, and we want to specify that this function can have only keyword arguments. So what we will do is to put an asterisk, let's say return. So we put an asterisk first as the first parameter, and then we put the next parameter, first name string, last name string. We want to return first name, last name. And when we call this function, we want to print full name is equal to first name John, last name Doe. When we do this like this, and let's say we are printing another statement, so you can see both, we want to print full name, and this time we're just going to print the names without the keyword argument. So we just want to print Jane Doe. So let's clear this, and you see one results on error and one will go through. So we have this first one takes 2, the full name takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 was given, and that is for this second one, because what this does, we want to specify that the function can have only one keyword argument, so we add this here. Okay, so which means that whenever this function is called, there must be a keyword before the name of that. You shouldn't print like this without the keyword argument. So whenever we want to specify that the function must use a keyword argument, we put an asterisk before the parameter definitions like that. If we want to, let's say any argument, let's say for instance we want to have 2 different argument types in the same function. Let's say we want to say we create a function person, for instance, that takes 2 different types. Let's do it like this, person. I can explain this better when I create it. Let me just stop using data types now, just so that you can understand this better. So we have a function called person, and what we want to do here is to specify, let's say first name, we want to specify last name, then we want to put like a /, and then let's say age and gender. Let's do age and gender, and what we want to return is, let's say return first name, last name is age, and then we'll put gender like this. So what we are doing here is we want to combine 2 argument types in the same function. We want to be able to have keyword arguments and non-keyword arguments. When we put a // like this, it means that these first 2 that we have. All the arguments before the forward slash are positional only. They must be in the same order. They cannot use keyword arguments. Everything after so we have a forward slash, and then we have an asterisk and then comma. Everything before the forward slash is positional only, and everything after the asterisk is keyword. If you use only forward slash, it just means that everything before the forward slash it has to be positional only argument. Okay, so we can have positional only arguments when we want to have that forward slash there, where we say that this is going to be positional only when we specify the forward slash. So everything before the forward slash is positional only. Everything after the asterisk is keyword only. Okay, so when you put the forward slash, the things before positional only, the things after asterisk is keyword argument. So let us say we want to print now. Let's print twice, and one should generate an error. So let's print person. John Doe is positional. Age, let's say 35, and we'll put gender male, right? And then this is a string, so we'll do it like this. And then let's try to print and violate the rule. And let's say we print person, and in this person we're printing, we try to use keyword here, and we'll see that this will result to an error. We want to use first name Jane, last name Doe, and then we don't specify. We specify age 35, and then we put male. So now this second one violates the rule, and what we are trying to do here is to say that we are going to be using keyword for where this part is supposed to be positional only, and then we are going to be using this part that is only keyword. We can already see the wriggly line for error that we have there. So when we run, this is already showing the error, so we can already see it. But what this means is that we can only use the value here, anything before the forward slash, and everything after the asterisk uses keywords. Okay, and then I run, and then we have John Doe is a 35 male, like that, because that's what I wanted to print. Or we can say is a 35 let's say year-old male, and then when I run again, it's a 35-year-old male. But once I do not specify anything here, or let me say I specify first name is equal to John, it's going to give me an error here, because the person function already recognizes that the first two arguments should be positional only, like that. Okay, so this is what we want to do. If you want positional only without having the the keyword only, we use forward slash for positional only, we use asterisk for keyword only. So this is where we end this lesson. We are going to look at more functions in the next lesson. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.